average American eats almost 120 pounds of chicken every year, but duck, less than a single pound. I'm on a one-woman mission to fix that. This is how to cook duck. Duck is a waterfowl that's been consumed by humans for millennia. When you buy a whole duck, it does look a lot like a chicken. It's slightly larger, and it has the same breakdown and anatomy as a chicken, but you'll notice a lot of differences when you start cooking with them. First of all, duck breasts are larger relative to their size as opposed to chicken breasts, and duck legs are smaller. But the biggest difference you'll find between duck and chicken is where they store their fat. As a waterfowl, ducks have a thick layer of fat right underneath their skin. Similar to seals or whales, ducks use this fat layer to insulate their bodies in cool water and help them float. Chickens, as landfowl, don't have that same level of fat. So when you cook a duck, you have to cook it differently than chicken, otherwise you're going to end up with a greasy mess. In fact, I would always recommend that you treat duck much more like steak than you treat it like chicken. Fun fact, even though you're going to treat it like a red meat and it has a dark red hue, it's technically a white meat. What does duck taste like? Duck tastes fairly similar to chicken, but because of the higher fat content, has a richer, deeper flavor. Let's talk about how to cook duck. When cooking duck, you need to think about how to render the fat. In the culinary world, rendering is to raise the temperature of a meat to allow the fat to melt out of it. It imparts wonderful flavor, but doesn't leave your meat tasting greasy or having big chunks of fat inside it. Because of the thick layer of fat in duck, rendering duck fat is the most important part of the cooking process. The way that you cook duck really should be dependent on the cut that you're using. You should treat duck breast very similar to a steak. You should focus on rendering out the fat and then cooking it to medium rare. Although I'll note that's not exactly what the USDA recommends. Continuing the beef analogy, when you cook duck legs and thighs, you really should be trying to cook it the way you would a tough piece of beef. When you cook it for a long period of time, it becomes incredibly tender, the fat will render out, and leave you with a really delicious piece of dark meat. Honestly, it's pretty hard to do a bad job when cooking duck legs and thighs. You can cook them pretty much as long as you want, and they'll never go dry. They're a great starting point if you don't know where to get started cooking duck. When preparing a whole duck or just duck breasts for cooking, you should try to take a knife and add some small cuts to the fat layer. Adding those cuts gives additional surface area for the fat to render from, plus it helps the skin get super crispy. Whole duck can be tricky to cook because of the different temperature needs of the breast and thighs, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. You should just find a very well-established recipe. Remember when cooking duck that it's a fundamentally different bird than chicken. You can't just take a chicken recipe that you know and love and try to apply it to duck. You'll either end up with an overcooked or just very greasy dish, and it's not very pleasant. When cooked right, duck is the best of all worlds. And I can unabashedly say that duck is my favorite meat. So I hope you will go out and try it yourself. And until next time, I'm Kara, and I can cook.